Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. We are talking about the Nashville Voices campaign at the Nashville Public Library. Basically, they are collecting stories from women in our area. You don't have to be a CEO or an elected official. It's any woman that has meant something to you. You could tell your own story, but that's what the library is doing. It started on August 18th. It's going through September 30th. We have with us Andrea Fanta with the Nashville Public Library, who's helping to put all of these stories, collect them all. We just heard, and I've asked people to call in with their stories, and two people have, Ariel and Donna, and they were both very powerful. Donna had abuse in her story, and someone helping her get past that. Do you see that in the ones that you have so far?
So far, not. You know, we're lucky to have the YWCA next door, Thistle Farms, agencies where, you know, people can find the help and compassion they need. When we did do this series before the opening, we reached out to 9 community leaders, and we actually did talk to Becca Stevens at Thistle Farms and Shell Waller, who is a fascinating story. So she went through recovery and then started kind of a recovery community of her own. So we've been really lucky to hear from some amazing women who are helping others. You know, the story that I'm going to submit is about my grandmother, Gangadea Maharaj Ramdani, who was born in Calcutta, and she was a child bride. So she was at 13, married off to a 30-year-old man.
Oh, wow.
She had 6 children. So you can imagine that from there, she was violated at least 6 times. And I can tell you that her blood is in my veins. You know, she escaped a really abusive situation. She was only allowed to go to school until the 3rd grade, and then she was kept home so that she could learn domestic work. She made her brother teach her how to read, write, and do math when she wasn't allowed to go to school. She was never allowed to learn how to drive. So she was one of the fiercest women on the Metro bus system, I think, that her community has ever seen. She was just, I mean, she was really incredible.
Was she here in Nashville?
So my grandmother is in Dixon County. That's kind of where we settled. I'm an immigrant. I'm the child of immigrant parents. And, you know, my grandmother is 4 feet tall, and she is a force to behold, and she kind of just bulldozed her way through Dixon County, and everybody loves her, and she's made a good life there.
And that's, again, this wide array of voices. And when you look at, you've had about 100, you've had a couple tonight even, how does it, and you may be one of the few people that's kind of seen them all that have come in. What does it kind of point to as far as our city? I mean, we all have some idea of our city. I was fascinated by Donna's story, you know, saying that she lived in nice green hills and everybody thought she had a great life, and that's part of our city. And then the story you just said, that's part of our city. I mean, what have you learned as somebody who knows there are a lot of different stories? What does this kind of shed light on for you?
For me, you know, I'm a bit insulated, so I kind of live and work downtown. So I'm in a pretty privileged place. You know, a former boss of mine used to say, if you're downtown, you're kind of in a 2-mile radius of lawyers and lobbyists. And so for me, what this exercise has shown is there are a lot of dots to connect between the conversations that we have as a city about displacement, development, education, gentrification, our public schools. I think that there are a lot of dots between kind of that macro level and then the micro level of what people are navigating through and dealing with in everyday life. But I do think there are some joints there, right? I think there's some shared muscle there. And so what we're hoping happens is the more that people interact with this space, they'll be able to talk about struggle and social movement in a way that they define that. Shirley Chisholm is one of the women who's featured prominently in this exhibit. and I'm going to get this wrong, but she said something like, if you're not given a seat at the table, then bring a folding chair. And that's probably one of my favorites. So we're really hoping that women and men will come to this exhibit and maybe start with their story and connect it to a larger story, and then push it a little further forward to think about, I have story, do I have responsibility? I have story, do I have agency? I have story, do I have opportunity? Obviously, we can't control what happens from there. We can hope, but I think we've set people up really nicely with a really edifying space to do that. And it's right down the hall from our civil rights room. So one thing I do not have to do a lot of selling for as the marketing director is the library civil rights room. To me, it is sacred space. And I think people come there to learn and to explore, but I also think they come there to just be. So I'm really proud that you can walk to one end of the hallway and go to the civil rights room, and you can look at photos of Diane Nash, and then you can head over to the Votes for Women exhibit. That did not happen by accident.
No, no. And just I'm so interested that the Votes for Women exhibit is listening to stories of women. Because it seems like what you might try and do is go and get stories of the first women to vote back, 100 years ago. And that would be very interesting. Mm-hmm. But this is just so unique.
Yeah.
It's just so unique. And it kind of gives us a view of our city that we don't often get to see. And that's very powerful. And so in this world that we live in now, what do you think? How do you think it makes, when you see all the contention that's out there and all the discord and divisiveness, does this give you some hope?
It gives me hope. I mean, it gives me a lot of pride too. And I'm just really grateful. I'm not meaning to talk about myself too terribly much. Not that I have a problem doing that, but I'm getting paid, and my team is getting paid to do this. I think it really speaks to, you asked me earlier about kind of to connect the dots to the city. My former boss, Phil Bredesen, told everybody that a city with a great library is a great city. Nashville has embraced its library. We have a library foundation, which has an obvious way for you to give and support the library. We've got an amazing volunteer base. We've got friends of the library at each of our 20 neighborhood locations, our branches. This is a library that cares about its community and a community that cares about its library. And when you have the two, magic happens. And I think this is what we're seeing with this campaign.
Yeah, you've read some of the stories. I might ask you to read another one. I would think, when I hear this, first thing I think is people are going to call and talk about their mom. Mm-hmm. My mom did this. So you've asked people to tell about a woman that meant something to them, made a big impact in their life. Many of the stories you've heard so far are not necessarily just a mom.
Yeah.
I mean, a mom's huge, but it's others. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing a lot of moms, or are you seeing a lot of something else?
We're not seeing all moms, which I think is, good. I think we got it right kind of with the message and the call for this one. So Megan, out of Green Hills again, wrote in about Peggy, who she described as a smart, stubborn teacher. So here's a teacher. The majority of her career was at Nashville Public Schools. She likes the tough cases. She specialized in exceptional education, working with inner city, under-resourced 7th and 8th graders who had behavior disorders. I
want to see her picture, and I do want to honor her, because that's awesome.
Yep. So we're a bit analog in how we're collecting the pictures and matching them with the submissions. Part of it is on purpose. We kind of want to keep everything for the big unveil, but you will be seeing these people's faces.
Good, because I want to meet that person.
Yep.
I mean, they're in the library, I guess. Their picture or whatever. That's great.
Yep.
Those are the people that are really making a huge difference, and that's how she's spent her life, and I'm glad she's being recognized.
Yep.
All right, we're going to take a break. Then we're going to come back and we'll talk about how you can submit this. Let's say you want to. Again, we'll kind of walk you through how you would do it what's involved. It's quite simple. But we'll take a break. We'll be back right after this.